The truth about gender-affirming care. Let's find out.
If I told you that I advocate for the
First of all, you can't tell me shit because you're in a PragerU video. But moving on.
chemical castration, sterilization, and physical mutilation of children and young adults.
Physical mutilation of children and young adults. I like how children and young adults are being put next to each other here, as if like somebody who's under the age of consent and somebody who's like 20 years old are in a comparable category when it comes to the stupid fear-mongering bullshit we're doing here. Physical mutilation involves literally any kind of surgery, though. So, you know, sometimes that happens to babies. You know, babies sometimes have surgeries. Sounds kind of scary, but I'm, you know, pretty sure sometimes they need it.
Or worse. But that's exactly what activists, medical professionals, and progressives who promote and defend gender-affirming care do advocate.
It reminds me, I imagine that back when like new surgeries were being invented, imagine like the first time heart surgery became a thing. The idea of doing a heart surgery, like just any surgery on a heart. I don't know what that would have been. I don't know if it's a modern or not modern thing. I feel like before germ theory, we probably wouldn't have survived heart surgery. And people are like screaming, you want to mutilate, you want to tear past the inner humors of our God-given bodies, and you want to molest the sacred core at the heart of our being for people as young. That's what supporters of heart surgery are. Like, you could do this with anything. All right, let's go.
The problem for these gender ideologues, of course, is while it is possible to identify as anything, it is not possible for a man to be a woman or a woman to be a man.
Damn. Well, that would be the case unless the concept we're talking about is one of identity, in which case actually identifying as something makes you that thing, you know? It's actually quite simple. There are lots of categories that we belong to that have nothing to do with some kind of deterministic empirical quota or trait. I mean, hell, being a goth, right? You know, we know that a person can be a goth or not be a goth. I don't know where exactly you'd find the fine line between the two, but being cool, I'm cool. Many people have said this. Find me the DNA strand that makes me this. It's dumb. You know, there's not actually a point in addressing these arguments because conservatives have been willfully pretending there isn't a difference between gender and sex for like 6 years now. No matter how many times it gets brought up to them in debates or in direct confrontations, they will always pretend, like they won't even defeat the idea, they won't even address it, they will just pretend that trans activists and progressive people have one concept, which is gender/sex, as opposed to two separate ones. If they're not going to engage with the arguments, there's no point in me doing it either. We've done this a billion times.
To obscure this fact, activists have manufactured a small dictionary of sweet-sounding terms like transgender.
What? Wait. But conservatives use that term as what? Manufacture. So first of all terms are manufactured. We don't discover words. We make them. We make words to describe things. And the thing we're describing here is something that conservatives also describe using the same terminology.
Gender fluidity and non-binary. Gender
fluidity always comes up when conservatives are just kind of like running through the few terms they've cobbled together in their fearmonger quest. I have never met a person who like actively identified as gender fluid. Like I don't even. It's just such a thing that you just don't interact with unless you're already in communities that have people like that, like really progressive, you know, like more online queer people, or if you're deliberately seeking it out.
affirming care is the phrase activists have coined to describe sex change treatments, such as puberty blockers, hormonal injections, and double mastectomies.
Okay. Puberty blockers are not sex change treatments at all. They don't do that. That's not a thing they can do. The thing they do is in the name of the medicine, puberty blockers. Hormone injections don't necessarily change your sex, but they do cause you to adopt different sexual characteristics. It's complicated. We'll probably get to that in a later portion of this video. And double mastectomies are when you take away the boobies, and cisgender women have done that before for cancer. It's not necessarily a sex change treatment, you know?
Shockingly, children's hospitals are big players in this game. The Boston Children's Hospital's website has posted videos in which its doctors describe a full menu of medical treatments, including hysterectomies for gender-confused teens. The gender clinic...
So a doctor talked about medical procedures? Okay, sure. All right. That seems fine. You know, even if a kid was really young or whatever, and they weren't on the table for something like a hysterectomy, you would still mention that down the line, right? Like you might say to someone who's, I don't know, 14, here's stuff we can do now. Down the line, there might be different procedures. This is like totally normal in medicine. Like, yeah. Oh yeah, this is the children's hospital that received bomb threats after Kaya Rachik, the Libs of TikTok woman, and Matt Walsh lied about them. They received bomb threats, had to shut down for a while. And then, you know, naturally after that, Matt Walsh basically like celebrated their victory.
At the Barbara Bush Children's Hospital in Maine, offers instructions to boys on how to tuck their boy parts to make them look more like girl parts.
Yeah, so that is something that you can do. You basically, you do a little twisteroo with your dick. I've heard that there's a trick to it. I don't know, and I don't care. I like having a bulge. I like how this is something that we're fearmongering over. We're literally talking about, like, here's how to, like, move you. Like, I'm pretty sure that if you go to a doctor and you like, have a urology appointment or something, you can have the most basic, weird shit explained to you by a doctor, because the human body is weird and complicated, you know? If you have like if you get an injury on your dick or something, like you know it gets into like a wood chipper, and then the doctor is talking to you and they're like, okay, so here's how you can pee safely without reopening the 17 like gaping wounds that we've sewn together from your, you know, shattered genitalia. I feel like a conservative video would then go like, and at this hospital, doctors teach boys how to use their penis, or some shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, so much of these videos are just, how do we take incredibly innocuous concepts and make them sound terrifying? What is this? How does this even sound terrifying as it's being presented? How to tuck your boy parts to make them... It's how to not have a dick bulge, okay? Who's dying from this?
Yale University's pediatric gender program director has said she's medically assisted children as young as 3 years old on their gender journey.
Okay. Like, with what? Consultation? With what? We're not going to say, are we? Because we want to imply that like a 3-year-old came in and got bottom surgery or something. That's what the video wants to imply. Like because in the mind of a conservative, what they think is happening here is that a 3-year-old boy like accidentally got into his mom's drawer and like smeared some lipstick across his forehead, and she rushed him over here, and immediately Bonesaw over here took at his junk and gave him bottom surgery, which I imagine in the conservative mind is kind of like a wedge cut on wood for a carpenter, where you just do like two like that, you know. But we're not going to say what was done here.
Vanderbilt University Medical Center has assessed gender care to be a new profit center. One of its doctors explained...
That is true. In a for-profit private healthcare system, something Republicans have been ardently fighting for, it is true that medical procedures cost money and make other people profits. I agree that they should be free. I think that you should be able to go to your doctor, get advice on tucking for free. That's my position. I stand with PragerU in calling for the decommodification of tucking advice from doctors.
Knowing patients will have to return for repeated...
I like how they gave the trans woman a 5 o'clock shadow there. Gave this kid quite the chin. Yeah, I wonder why. Remember that at the end of the day, transphobia is rooted primarily in disgust over perceived degeneracy. It's the same reason why, like, once you get past all the tiresome arguments about why actually we should prevent gay marriage or this, that, the other, at the end of the day, the real argument is they don't like seeing men kissing. And for that reason, at the root of their criticisms, there will always be, like, the attempt to reaffirm disgust as a political principle. So that's why they have to do stuff like this. But that's the actual argument here, you know?
The idea that teenagers, let alone small children, are capable of making such life-altering decisions.
What life-altering decisions? They've been very strategically ambiguous about what gender-affirming care means, right? Because the way they want you to go about it is they want you to think they mean surgery every time they say gender-affirming care. They keep analogizing it to cutting into your body. So they've drawn an association. Gender-affirming care means surgery.
First, we need to stop going along with the language games gender ideologues want us to play. There are men and women and boys and girls. And there are men and women and boys and girls who are confused or deluded about which one they are.
Again, there's not really a point in engaging with this because conservative rhetoric in the subject requires them to pretend that sex and gender are the same thing. We've addressed this literally like a million times. Sex refers to biology, gender refers to social role, blah, blah, blah. We've done this. Conservatives agree with this. I've talked to many conservatives on the subject. Ben Shapiro himself has multiple times, after being directly challenged, acknowledged the difference between the two. That's not a joke. He has directly said that. People have said, okay, well, can you acknowledge there are two different concepts here and we're referring to one, not the other? And Ben will say, okay. And then he just goes about in that conversation with the two concepts. And then the next day, they go back to pretending that there's only one. So, there's not really a point in engaging.
There is no such thing as gender-affirming care.
Yeah, it is. You can Google it. It's a thing. But
cannot affirm something that does not exist.
Gender-affirming care is a term that refers to medical care. The medical care exists. You've spent the whole video complaining about it. That doesn't make any sense. You're so dumb.
What does exist is chemical castration, sterilization, and surgical mutilation.
Interestingly, I noticed that at no point in this video have they actually talked about anything. They haven't talked about any trans surgery. They haven't talked about its rate of regret. They haven't talked about detransition. They haven't talked about what it physically entails. Don't get me wrong, guys. Bottom surgery, top surgery, they're trying procedures. Look into them. They're tough to do. I feel like, if anything, we could have gotten more. Did you know that for bottom surgery, they twist the penis inside out and then cut it up a bunch and then flip it and do a little doodad and then they do a pretzel knot? And like, I'm surprised we're not getting more grotesque, meaningless, surgical gore porn here. It's really dumb.